Hello,
Hooray!
everyone. It's the Tales of Lost Omens panel, and I'm just going to get into it to make up for some lost time. Hi, my name's Luis Loza. I'm one of the developers here at Paizo. I work on the Pathfinder Lost Omens line, which is why they brought me on board here. And I'm joined by a wonderful set of people, and I figured I'd let them introduce themselves. Seeing them on my screen here, we'll start with Avi.
Hi, my name is Avi Cool. I'm senior editor for Pathfinder at Paizo. And in addition to that, I have written for some Lost Omens, and I have done editing lead on a number of Lost Omens book, which has been a great pleasure. So I'm excited to talk to you today.
All right, next up is Eleanor.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Farron. I am the other developer on the Lost Omens line with Luis. We may or may not be clones of each other. Move on to the next slide because we're 20 minutes late.
Yeah, and finally, Mark Moreland. Hello.
Hello, I'm Mark Moreland. I'm Paizo's Director of Brand Strategy. I spent many years in the development trenches where Luis and Eleanor are now, but now I work primarily with our licensees and some of the business side of things about where we want to take the brand years from now and making sure that we're setting that stuff up now, including seeing what we can do in terms of expanding the campaign setting beyond just the products we've got. So.
Awesome. So we're here to tell you what's coming up in the future of Pathfinder, Lost Omens, and everything related to the campaign setting. If we want to go to our first slide, we were going to take some time to talk about the history of Lost Omens so far. Look at all these wonderful books that we put out, and we love them all. But we are wanting to move forward to tell you what's next. So we're just going to say, hey, throw in the chat what your favorite Lost Omens book is, and we'll be happy to hear from you. But let's move on to our next slide where we talk about our first set of upcoming books in the Lost Omens line. We're talking about the Lost Omens Grand Bazaar, which is a big book all about shops within the city of Absalom. Absalom has the Grand Bazaar in the city itself. It's a place you can, a massive marketplace you can visit, and this book is here to really facilitate a trip to a place like the Grand Bazaar. It's set in that part of the city, and it focuses on a variety of different shops that have a variety of different items for sale here. And what we're looking at right now is one of the various NPCs that you'll learn about in this book, who was written up by our very own Avi. Avi, do you want to tell us a bit about who this character is?
Yeah, this character, his name is Arhan Benimaya, and he is a magical tattoo artist. So we introduced the concept of magical tattoos early on in, I believe, Lost Omens Character Guide. And from there, we haven't done much with them until now. So we put them in Secrets of Magic and Grand Bazaar. So in addition to introducing some new magical tattoos, like we have one that can harness the powers of the polar winds, lots of cool stuff in there. So Arhan is a tattoo artist, and he can give you magical tattoos that you can buy in this shop. And then there are also some story hooks in there. Maybe you want your character to apprentice under him, even, and learn how to do magical tattoos. That's something that, if you want to go down that story, you can do that. His story is he is a Shelenite refugee from Cheliax who came to Absalom. I think I said he was around 12 years old. And when he first arrived in Absalom, his family were running like a little music lesson business to try to make ends meet, and he was doing portraits on the docks. And as he was trying to scrape together a living with his family doing that, he met a tattoo artist who ran this shop called Kraken's Ink Tattoo. And eventually he becomes an apprentice there, and now he runs the shop. And what I really wanted to do with Arhan is create a character who is both interesting and likable and will be fun for your PCs to be friends with, but also represent a little bit of my heritage because my family are Sephardic Jews and fled Spain during the Spanish Inquisition. And this was kind of the closest metaphor in the setting that I could think of to represent that story. So, and then I also did a little bit of research into historical tattooing pigments and methods, which you'll see in there. And yeah, I hope you all enjoy that. Oh, and nope, I forgot one last thing. He also does bartering on the side. So there are a variety of interesting relics from travelers all over the area. Relics in the general sense, not in the rules sense, that you can find in that shop as well.
Yeah, and we saw there an image of the Kraken's Ache tattoo. I think that was a stall that points you from the Grand Bazaar to where the proper shop is. Arhan has like I think if I remember right, a kobold buddy that runs the
Yes.
the booth that says, "Hey, here's cool tattoos you can get. Go talk to Arhan, and he'll get you the hookup." Yeah, so there are, I think I last counted, 23 different main shops featured in this book, each of them with their own NPCs and images of said NPCs, their shops, a lot of backstory about who these characters are, and a lot of information on the shop, as well as some plot hooks for when the time comes that the players decide, hey, let's go buy some stuff, and someone asks, hey, what's the shopkeep's name? You can have one ready to go and ask, shopkeep, have you heard any rumors around? They have story hooks ready to go for you. So if we go to our next slide, we get to actually look at one of the tattoos that Avi mentioned, which is the Arctic Vigor tattoo. It's a pretty cool thing. When you have it, it allows you to unleash blasts of cold wind, and the greater version also like reduces the effects of cold around you. So there are a lot of different items. They're kind of scattered throughout these different shops. We like to imagine looking through the different book, or through the book, you'll find a variety of different items. It's not just all weapons in one place and then all magical armor in the next, and so on. They're really mixed up, and it's kind of to encourage a window shopping feel, like you're moving through the different shops and see something that might catch your eye, like this interesting tattoo. But the other cool thing that we feature in this book, if we look at our next slide, is a set of archetypes, one of which is the Spell Trickster. The Spell Trickster draws from something that was featured in first edition Pathfinder, which were magic tricks. You could take specific spells and augment them in specific ways beyond just their normal capabilities, and the Spell Trickster is an archetype that's available to any spellcaster. So you can take things like Mage Hand, which normally just lets you pick things up, and suddenly use it to pick locks and disable traps and stuff. Or you can use your mirror image to create a flanking buddy for your allies and stuff like that. So there's more than just items to be found. There's lessons to be learned within the Grand Bazaar. There's just a lot of stuff that you can get while you're here. But once you're done shopping around, you might move on to our next slide here and visit the greater city of Absalom with our next book, which is Absalom City of Lost Omens, a book that I'm sure you've been patiently waiting for a long time. Absalom is the city at the center of the world. Mark, do you mind telling us a little bit about what makes Absalom so important and why it gets its own book?
I mean, in terms of real world influences for Absalom, it was really like thought to be like the Jerusalem. It's the place where multiple religions have spawned out of this city. It was founded by the god Eridan when he became a god. In raising the Starstone out of the bottom of the inner sea, he ascended to godhood and decided, well, I'm just going to keep this stone here and build this city around it. So for the last almost 5,000 years, Absalom has been around as a sort of a hub where all of the ascended gods' faiths are based there, and it's a center of trade. It's a center of cultural exchange, and so the idea was that no matter where your character is from or where your character is going, there's this city where you have a reason to be there. So it's a place where adventures start or adventures can end, depending on what your ultimate goal is. So that's sort of the history of Absalom
Yeah.
and what it's about.
And Absalom also has a huge connection to the reason why omens are lost in the first place. If we look at our slide, next slide here, there's a very important figure tied to the city of Absalom, which is Eridan. He is here holding the Starstone, which I've mentioned to a few of my coworkers. That looks so heavy to carry. I mean, anyone that can pick
Well,
something up that big is probably worthy of ascension to divinity, right?
he's a god.
Yes.
Though, can God make a boulder big enough that he can't lift it? Well,
Yeah.
Eridan couldn't, I guess.
Eridan gained the power to make the bigger boulders. We'll see what happens in the future with those.
We don't know how dense that stone is. That really could be like far heavier than it looks even.
Yeah. So if we go to our next
inside.
If we go to our next slide, we get to see some of the artwork featured in City of Lost Omens here, including this wonderful parade. Eleanor, what's going on with this? What kind of celebration is this?
It's the celebration of Eridan because he's such a cool guy and nothing bad could ever possibly happen to him. So yeah, you can see there's like this Minotaur dude up front. That's Vrodny Voon, who tried to, I think he was the first person to try and siege Absalom, and then Eridan blew him up. He didn't actually blow him up. He caused an earthquake and made everyone fall into a pit. But so you got a big parade, and that Eridan actor is going to smack that Vrodny Voon actor. And then behind them, you've got Daskari, which is an awesome demon lord to make a parade float out of. But yeah, they're parading Daskari around because Eridan beat him up too, although not well enough because he came back in Wrath of the Righteous, which you can play on Steam now if you want to, and see what happened with Daskari.
Finish beating him up.
But yeah, this is a big parade of all things Eridan with lots of streams and banners, and it actually looks pretty fun.
Yeah. There's a lot of artwork. Looking at our next slide here, that just everyday life, not just the celebrations of Eridan beating up all of Absalom's enemies. Just everyday life, like traveling through the Grand Bazaar here with all the goodies that you just bought.
When I first saw this illustration, I couldn't help but call it the Death Stranding illustration because I first saw this around the time that book or that movie. God, that video game came out, and so the idea of the person traveling who's far overburdened and they're doing it for like purely, mercantile reasons. It just was like, that's totally what that guy is.
I mean, that looks like an adventure. That could be an adventure coming back from with the spoils of a dungeon, right? Like with how much stuff you find sometimes. It's great. There's a lot of artwork showing life in Absalom, but there's also lots of artwork looking at our next slide here about what the look of Absalom is. We in particular wanted to focus on things like Absalom's architecture. So we have a few different buildings here. One of them, the one on the left here, is the Bank of Abadar, if I remember right. The middle one is the Mother Sphinx, which is kind of an important figure, kind of an icon of the city. And Eleanor, please help me. Do you remember what the third one was?
Oh yeah, that's in the Foreign District, where I think it offers lower taxes to foreigners, and all the foreigners that go and live there. That's from the Vudrani phase when Kibin Sal. You mostly might know that name from the Impossible Lands because he sort of went over and founded Jalmaray, but also boats like kept going from that point and reached Absalom and like kicked off this whole craze because hey, these new people have showed up and they have all these cool things and we want that. And so there's like a whole lot of Vudrani architecture in that area of the city from that period, and like just going on further from that because once you have an influence there and everyone's like, oh, it's so classy, I love it. Architects keep using that motif even if they might pick up others along the way.
If I remember right, there's a bit in the intro or early on in the book where we describe the various phases of history throughout Absalom. There's different ages, if you will, and with them comes all these different cultural considerations. Like, oh, this is when the Budrani stuff was really important and really in the norm and stuff, and then moves through all these different cultural shifts, which is a pretty interesting thing. I don't think a lot of setting books have really delved into that too often. But it, of course, Absalom, being as big as it is full of people. So we also have one last slide here where we get to show off a couple of the NPCs you might encounter in the city, which include some that are not the ones you
You've
might
probably
expect to
seen
meet.
all these before.
You probably have seen all of these before, but they're people who are tied to the history of Absalom. We have here Zuscut, the king of the puddles, if I remember right, and we have Noir Spirit Skin, Winslow Starborn, and Chun Hae Sung, who is the head of the Clockwork Guard, if I remember right. You might have even seen her earlier in the Guns and Gears artwork as well, fighting alongside some other cool NPCs. So there's a lot of information on our NPCs here. We have, I believe 100 pages on NPCs, giving you details about their connections and who they are and who they know and how they all tie into everyone else. It's a lot.
It's the most intricately done,
Yeah.
like appendix, or it's not even really a glossary. I mean, it really is just like a really intricate web of NPCs, and each one points to 2 or 3 others, talks about who they are friends with and who they're not, and you could spend hours or more just reading through that and just jumping from NPC to NPC. It's a lot.
Yeah. So Absalom, City of Lost Omens, we're expecting it to come out in November, December-ish. We'll see what happens with shipping and everything. I forgot to mention earlier that Grand Bazaar is slated for just a few weeks from now. I think October 13th is its official street date. So look forward to those 2 books. Right around the same time that Absalom is releasing, we have our next slide here, which shows off another book we talked about a bit before, but get to go in depth a little bit here, called Monsters of Myth. As Eric mentioned in his keynote, we had Lost Omens Legends a bit back, and we're kind of giving monsters the legendary treatment here. We have 20 different monsters to present in Monsters of Myth, each with a full write-up on their background, a write-up on information on how to include them in your campaign at various levels, low, middle, or high-level play, along with their stat blocks, and sometimes rewards for players in the forms of an archetype or a new magic item or things like that. Or it might have extra tools for GMs to play with them. There might be minions that they can use to supplement encounters or to kind of serve as stepping stones leading up to some of these monsters. But I think some of the most exciting thing that we have here is showing how these monsters are represented in the world. Looking at our next slide, we have a lot of artwork that is meant to be cultural depictions of the monsters. These monsters are legendary. They're mythical, so they are something that people talk about a lot throughout the setting. And of course, it leads to things like artwork or tapestries like this one of Desert's Howl, a creature that's based out of the deserts of Thuvia. And, what do people... we have real world depictions of monsters all the time. So of course in Golarion they would have things like that as well. But the depictions are cool and all. We also give you artwork by showing you our next slide of what these creatures actually look like. So Desert's Howl, they're in the desert. Now this is probably not what I think. I'd rather see the tapestry than run into this guy in the desert myself. But there's a lot of cool ideas, I think, with showing off not only these depictions, but also the different types of art styles and stuff that come with them. During the keynote, we got to see Gragosant as well, who is kind of like a more medieval book style rather than that tapestry style. So we get a lot of different monsters. I'm going to go through a couple of the monsters that you can expect here and see what everyone can tell me about these. Looking at our next slide, I think, Mark, you can tell us a little bit about... Oh, no. Okay. So, sorry. Got that mixed up. Well, I'll ask Eleanor to tell me first.
Is. No,
I'll ask Eleanor to tell me about this one.
Next slide.
So, Eleanor, I think you know pretty well who this character is.
I don't think anybody knows pretty well what that character is. I wrote an entire adventure around not finding it. But yeah, people may recognize her or may not. She goes by the name of the Mosquito Witch. Nobody is sure if she's a mosquito or a witch, but she likes mosquitoes, or at least they seem to like her. And yeah, she hangs out around a village called Shimmerford, assuming she exists and isn't actually just a bunch of mites playing pranks on the town. But nobody knows a whole lot around her. She was seen once by a group of teenagers in the dark, and rumor and
That
hearsay
always ends
and
well.
and telephone has basically spawned so many legends and myths around her that nobody actually knows squat. You can explore some of those if you want to play the Pathfinder Society adventure, The Mosquito Witch, but this book tells you some of the legends about her and offers some things that might be true, but ultimately
I think we even offer
it provides it provides a way for you to make your own version of the Mosquito Witch depending on which you believe, or maybe she just doesn't even exist. Maybe she's just a prank.
Could be. Let's look at our next monster and see maybe if this is the one I was trying to get. Yes, so this is Fafnir, and I think, Mark, you might know a bit more about Fafnir than you would the Mosquito Witch.
Yeah, I mean, Fafnir is like the Uber Uber driver. Yes, no, is like the pinnacle of is the Linorm. You know, he's the the pinnacle of Linormdom, and so we've got a whole nature and culture all about. Or in the setting, all about killing these things to become a king. So I imagine there's a lot of opportunity for this. We've actually got a piece of web fiction coming down the road where Jake Tondro wrote an old English style epic written from Fafnir's perspective. Describing a major event in the history of the world. So that's something for folks to look forward to when this book gets closer. Is some pretty fun fiction around him.
For sure. So Fafnir and Mosquito Witch represent some monsters that we kind of have already established in the setting. We also have a lot of new monsters here. Half of the book is kind of established creatures, and half is new monsters. And one of these is this one here, Talje. Avi, how comfortable do you feel talking about Talje? Do you know?
Yeah, I can talk about Talje. This was one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites in the book. I did not have the luck or the time really to read the entire book cover to cover when I was editing it, but I did edit this one. And Talje is a creature that has it's neutral in nature in a very kind of sometimes benevolent, but sometimes chaotic, depending on how you treat it. And it is most distinguished by these masks. You can see it's wearing a mask in this picture. And each of the masks that Talje wears have a kind of archetypal person associated with them, like an elder or I can't remember off the top of my head, but the different
the
other
beast
archetypes.
And the general.
Thank you.
The
yes,
noble.
Yes, and so these masks, if you manage to get your hands on them, each mask has a unique set of abilities that they can grant anyone who wears the masks. And if you manage to impress Talje, it will potentially give you one of the masks as a gift. So if you come across this monster, don't kill it. Don't try to kill it. First off, you can't.
But then
And
you
second,
get all the masks.
I don't know. You're probably asking for trouble, asking for major trouble. So yeah, Talje is potentially a friend, potentially a source of trouble, but something to be treated with respect and more of a force of nature than anything.
Yeah. So a lot of the
Something to be treated
monsters.
with buckwheat jelly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Uh,
buckwheat jelly is Talje's favorite food.
loves buckwheat jelly. A lot of the monsters in this book are just meant to be adversaries, or just straight up. Some of them straight up evil creatures, but some of them we wanted to give a bit of nuance or interesting wrinkles. So Talje is one of those where it's like you might just never fight it. You might never need that stat block, or sometimes you might even win Talje over and Talje fights beside you, and having that stat block with it will help the GM figure out, okay, how much have I ruined my own encounters by doing
You
that.
can do that with Fafnir as well. If you want Fafnir to fight with you, yeah, you can totally do that.
No problem. So Talje is based in.
That's called a cutscene, Mark.
Sometimes the GM needs a cutscene.
Yeah. Talje is one of the monsters from around Golarion. It's based out of Tian Sha, specifically. It's out of Huangat. So there's not just Avestan and Garundi monsters. It's not all out of the Inner Sea. We want to give monsters from all over Golarion. So we touch Arcadia, we touch Casmaron. There's just a lot of different places that these monsters come from. Most of the new ones are from around the world, but we got one more monster I want to show off here because I know it's everyone's favorite among the Lost Omens group here. This is one called
He
Coerces.
just wanted to play.
Coerces is a creature
He's
that
the
lives...
Coerces.
The Coerces, yes. He lives in the... what's it called? The... something Labyrinth in... the Barrier Peaks. Tagus Labyrinth, I think. Yes, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. But anyway, it's a creature that's trapped in this labyrinth that is, kind of stuck there. There's magical wards and everything. The Tagus Labyrinth, yes, correct. It's magical wards and stuff that keep this creature there. And people who go into the labyrinth can find lots of cool treasure, but they also have to contend with the fact that this creature lives there. No one really knows that it lives there, but if you go there, you might suddenly find yourself being followed and watched from the shadows. And, well, I like to think that the Coerces just wants a friend. And that's why, he's been alone for a long time. But it's a pretty creepy creature. There's a lot of information about the different treasures that you can find in the labyrinth and how the labyrinth works. And it's just a cool guy that you can meet while you're down there. But speaking of the labyrinth, there's a lot of information on the different layers for some of these creatures. Looking at our next slide, we can look at the outside of Fafnir's lair, just the ominous entrance to go meet your Uber driver, Fafnir. And
I love that
one of the
birds for scale.
The book has information on what to find in such layers, so it tells you a bit of the things you can find in Fafnir's lair. It doesn't map it out or anything, so GMs can use that as they like, but it also tells you some of the treasures you can find inside, like our next slide here, which is the magical sword Riddle. It's a legendary sword that is apparently probably the best dragon slaying sword, if not one of the top 10 for sure, that is just very good at slaying dragons. So of course Fafnir, not wanting to deal with that, has claimed it and kept it in his hoard. So if you manage to sneak in, you might be able to get that sword and then fight Fafnir with it. So it's one of the various treasures you can find here in Monsters of Myth. And I think we can move on to our next slide to talk about the last book that we can talk about here is Knights of Lastwall, which is, I think, actually slated for spring release next year, April-ish at the moment. We don't have too much artwork yet because this book is in production, but this is a book, much like the Pathfinder Society Guide, all about the organization, the Knights of Lastwall. So when Tar-Baphon broke out of jail and blew up an entire nation, it was a huge blow to the people of Lastwall and everyone working to defend Golarion from the Whispering Tyrant, but they were resolute and decided to move on and continue their campaign and reformed. And they formed the Knights of Lastfall. And this book is all about the organization, about what it takes to become a member of the Knights of Lastfall, the different factions and training that you can get among the knights. It updates some of the existing Knights of Lastfall archetypes, like the Knights Reclaimant or the Knight Vigilant, with new archetype feats. And of course, gives you a lot of background on the various NPCs, important figures, and campaign hooks that are part of this. It even features a small, I think 10 page or so gazetteer on the Graveland specifically, which is the land that was formerly Lastfall, to hook up GMs with a lot of plot hooks and ideas for doing their own Knights of Lastfall adventures and campaigns. So it's an exciting book. I think a lot of people are looking forward to getting to rise up against Tar-Baphon and his forces. Avi, I know you're currently editing this book. Tell me some of the fun things that you've seen in this book that you're excited for people to see in the future.
Yes. So, first off, this book is so well written. It's just been a real pleasure to edit. So, I wanted to shout out both the freelance and the development process. That it's been really good so far. Both the narrative, and I've encountered some very fun mechanical aspects as well. One of the things that I've enjoyed most, though, is there are a variety of like in-world, just kind of chunks of text interspersed throughout, and they have such great voice to them. I'm not sure who wrote each one, but they all really carry kind of the mood of the knight in shining armor, and also have a good sense of humor. So I think this is a book that is highly readable, and people are really going to like it.
Yeah. I wish we had more time to talk about this book right now, but because we're running short, I think we got to move on to our next bit of information, where we talk about our web fiction, our wonderful web fiction, who is being helmed by Mark here. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about how web fiction comes to be? What it even is, I guess, first, for people who don't know, if you're only reading the books and stuff.
For years and years ago, in the before times, Paizo used to publish novels, which were the Pathfinder Tales novels. We released 36 or 38 of those during the life of the product line. It's on indefinite hold right now, because the fiction publishing industry is sort of a mess at the moment. So we're just trying to figure out what our plans are for that. In the meantime, we still want to be able to tell stories that enrich the world and the settings, that explore the past or the legends that we can't necessarily always do easily in a role-playing game product. So on a regular basis, usually once or twice a week, we'll release a piece of fiction based on the web. These are short, 2,000 words or less pieces that explore an aspect of an upcoming book or one of our iconic characters or something like that. And so they're a great opportunity for people to get a flavor for the types of stories that you can tell in our world and with our different rule supplements. And we have a lot of plans to try and expand those, sort of see how they can grow, as interest demands.
Yeah. We can go to one of our slides here. Next slide, I think, is one of the pieces that was used for the web fiction. Specifically, this is leading up into the Shroud of Four Silences. What was that exactly? I know there was this whole kind of cool email thing.
Yeah, that was an experiment that we did. We've done it now once with Pathfinder and once with Starfinder, to release a 12 or 13 chapter novella in serialized form by our email mailing list. So folks who've signed up for our emails, we send out a weekly newsletter and other communications. If you sign up for that, then we would send a chapter every week of this story. The Shroud of Four Silences was the first of those that launched last October or November, written by Leanne Merciel. And that's now been compiled and released as an ebook that you can get on Paizo.com or the Kindle store. And we plan to compile the Starfinder one as well, and this is a marketing endeavor rather than a book that we're publishing. So it's not we don't have quite as cut and dry schedules and things as we do for our print products. We're working on another one. We'll see what the right time is to release that and what that content's going to be, but we'll let everyone know. So in the meantime, go on Paizo.com, sign up for our newsletter, and then when we do release more web fiction, you'll be sure to get that as well.
And I'm sure if people buy the compiled stories there as well on the site, that will tell us that you like these web fiction.
Exactly.
And we'll try to get more out there.
And it's a little off topic, and I know we're running short on time here, but we just yesterday announced Pathfinder and Starfinder Infinite, which is a partner program that will allow community members to tell their own stories in our worlds and sell those on a safe harbor marketplace where we're not going to come after them for using Valoros or the Whispering Tyrant or whatever in their fiction, and we actually encourage it. So I'm really hoping that sort of lights a spark in the fiction community, and people really start delving into the rich setting that we've got and telling their own stories there. And if we see a whole bunch of people writing fiction and buying fiction there, then that's going to be even more evidence that we should perhaps put our toe back in that water with some longer form fiction ourselves.
Okay, great. I mean, I love the fiction. I think I was super hooked with my first bit of fiction reading it out of the APs. So I love to see that it's still going. And I would love to keep this panel going, but I think we're just about out of time here. We had a time for questions, but I think that's going to have to, unfortunately, hop over to the Discord. If you're on the Discord event server, there is a Tales of Lost Omens channel that you can come by. I'll be there answering your questions at the very least, and I'll try to actually grab the list of questions we had for this and maybe throw them in there and answer them, to make up for this lost time. Before we go, I think I want to ask everyone just a quick, what's a fun thing to look forward to with Lost Omens or web fictions in the coming months, from a cool item or an NPC or something, starting with Avi.
Oh no, on the spot. Oh geez.
Here, I can say mine. I can say mine.
I think you should go first.
Okay, I'll go first, and I might end up stealing yours, Avi. There's a different set of squads and stuff throughout the Knights of Lastwall that just banded together, like, hey, this group and this group, and they kind of all do their own thing. And one of them is a group of sprites that have gathered together to become a sprite cavalry. They ride around on their corgi mounts and are known as Wing Squad and help support the Knights of the Lastwall in forests and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people will like learning about Wing Squad when that book comes out.
Every time you murder an undead, a fairy gets his wings.
Yeah, I think I am... Oh, go ahead, Mark.
No, you were already going in before. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I am still... The book that I keep talking about and the book that I'm most excited for is Grand Bazaar. I think you will all be really entertained by the items. That's one of the things that's so great about that book is some of the items are really quite funny. Like there's some eel related items in that book. Look forward to some eel related items. That's going to be mine.
Great.
I guess
Mark,
I'm next. I was going to say, I think that one thing that's sort of emerged in the web fiction over the last year or so has been a little through line of some little breadcrumbs that are being dropped by primarily one author who sort of started doing it on her own, and then I was like, hey, what are we pointing toward here? And we've got some interesting thoughts about what's actually going on in the background and where that comes to fruition and where it leads, whether that's stays exclusively to web fiction or leads somewhere else into a different type of product down the road. I don't know, but keep an extra close eye on that, and I'm interested to hear what theories the internet comes up with.
All right, Eleanor, do you got something?
Sure. There's an item in Grand Bazaar. Actually, there's two swords in Grand Bazaar that I really like, but
Oh,
I'm only
yes.
going to give you one. There's an item in Grand Bazaar where it's a sword, and if you take the sword and you put it in your mouth, you turn into a wolf that has a sword in its mouth. So if you want to be the Great Wolf from Dark Souls, or the Pokemon Zacian or Wolf Link or whatever, you can get that sword and do that.
It's going to be great.
So good.
Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you to my fellow panelists for helping us out with telling everyone what's next in Lost Omens. So everyone have fun at Gen Con, and we look forward to talking to you again later. Bye-bye.